The weathered cuneiform tablets discovered in the ruins of Nippur between 1888 and 1900 contain some of the most enigmatic references to divine human hybridization ever found in Mesopotamian literature. Among the thousands of fragments catalogued by the University of Pennsylvania expeditions, a particular group of administrative texts stands out for their unusual content, describing what scholars have termed the children of mixed essence. These tablets, dating to approximately 2100 BC, represent the final documented references to ongoing hybridization programs between the Anunnaki and human populations according to Sumerian records. What makes these documents particularly intriguing is their matter-of-fact administrative tone, lacking typical religious flourishes, instead reading like personnel records, tracking bloodlines, genetic characteristics, and hereditary assignments across multiple generations. The most significant of these tablets, designated CBS 14567 in the University Museum's collection, contains detailed genealogical records written in archaic Sumerian script that differs markedly from contemporary administrative documents. The text describes families of "one" who possessed capabilities exceeding normal human parameters, including extended lifespans measured in centuries, enhanced cognitive abilities for mathematical and astronomical calculation, and what the text describes as _"2" suggesting perceptual capabilities beyond ordinary human sensory range. Unlike mythological accounts of divine human offspring, these records provide specific family names, territorial assignments, and administrative responsibilities, treating hybrid lineages as functional components of Mesopotamian governance, rather than legendary figures. Archaeological evidence from multiple Mesopotamian sites supports the narrative found in these tablets through discoveries of skeletal remains that demonstrate unusual physiological characteristics distinguishing certain burial populations from ordinary citizens. Excavations at Ur's Royal Cemetery revealed individuals with cranial capacities exceeding normal human ranges, bone density measurements suggesting enhanced physical capabilities, and dental patterns indicating genetic distinctiveness from contemporary populations. Most significantly, these distinctive remains consistently appear in burials associated with administrative and priestly functions, suggesting that hybrid lineages occupied specific roles within Mesopotamian society that persisted for centuries after the Anunnaki departure. The precision of the genealogical records and their correlation with archaeological evidence indicates these were not mythological constructs, but actual breeding programs designed to preserve Anunnaki genetic heritage within human populations, creating lineages that would maintain divine knowledge and capabilities long after their celestial progenitors had withdrawn from direct earthly involvement. The Atrahasis epic, composed around 1700 BC but preserving much earlier traditions, provides explicit descriptions of the genetic manipulation procedures through which the Anunnaki created modified humans to serve as workers and administrators. The text describes the mixing of divine essence with earthly clay to produce beings who possessed enhanced intelligence and longevity while remaining fundamentally human in nature. What conventional scholarship dismisses as creation mythology becomes far more compelling when examined alongside Sumerian administrative texts that document ongoing breeding programs, genetic compatibility testing, and systematic management of hybrid bloodlines across multiple generations. The epic begins with a description of the original human creation as a response to labour shortages among the Anunnaki themselves. The text indicates that the lesser Anunnaki, known as the Agigi, had rebelled against harsh working conditions imposed by their superiors. To resolve this crisis, Enki proposed creating a new type of being that could perform necessary labour while freeing the divine beings for more important tasks. The epic describes this creation process in terms that suggest sophisticated understanding of genetic engineering principles. The goddess Nintu, working under Enki's direction, is described as mixing the clay of the earth with the blood of a slain god to create the first humans, the text provides specific details about this process, indicating that 14 pieces of clay were prepared, 7 to become males and 7 to become females. Each piece was implanted with divine essence and gestated for a specified period before being brought to life. The precision of these descriptions suggests actual technological procedures rather than mythological metaphors. The Akkadian version of the creation epic provides additional details about the genetic material used in human creation. The text identifies the slain god as Kingu, described as possessing intelligence and wisdom that would be transferred to the new beings. The epic indicates that this genetic material was carefully processed and refined before being incorporated into the clay matrix, suggesting understanding of genetic isolation and purification techniques. Administrative Tablet CBS 14,294 from the University of Pennsylvania collection describes what it terms bloodline selection protocols implemented during the final decades of direct Anunnaki rule. The document describes systematic evaluation of human populations to identify individuals carrying specific genetic markers that indicated compatibility with Anunnaki biological heritage. These evaluations involved detailed physical examinations, cognitive testing, and genealogical analysis that traced family histories back multiple generations to identify optimal breeding combinations that would preserve and concentrate desired traits. The selection process extended far beyond simple genetic considerations to include psychological profiling and cultural compatibility assessments. The results of this genetic manipulation, according to the Atrahasis epic, produced humans who possessed capabilities that exceeded those of purely natural beings. The text describes the first created humans as having lifespans of several hundred years, enhanced intelligence, and the ability to communicate directly with their divine creators. These enhanced capabilities gradually diminished over successive generations, requiring periodic intervention to maintain the desired characteristics in human populations. Temple records from Uruk describe maintenance protocols for these breeding programs that continued for centuries after the initial creation events, involving systematic mate selection, genetic compatibility testing, and monitoring of offspring characteristics to ensure continued preservation of Anunnaki genetic heritage. The precision with which these ancient texts describe genetic manipulation procedures becomes even more remarkable when compared to modern understanding of genetics and heredity. The Mesopotamian concept of mixing divine essence with earthly clay parallels remarkably with contemporary knowledge of how genetic material from different sources can be combined to produce hybrid organisms with characteristics of both parent lineages. The description of processing and refining genetic material before incorporation suggests understanding of techniques that modern genetic engineering has only recently developed. The systematic monitoring of offspring characteristics and the implementation of selective breeding programs to maintain desired traits demonstrate knowledge of hereditary principles that preceded Mendelian genetics by thousands of years. Excavations conducted by Leonard Woolley. Between 1922 and 1934 at Ur's Royal Cemetery, uncovered skeletal remains that demonstrate physiological characteristics exceeding normal human parameters. Analysis of cranial measurements from individuals buried in the death pits revealed average brain case volumes of 1,600 cubic centimeters compared to the modern human average of 1,400 cubic centimeters. These enhanced cranial capacities appeared consistently in burials associated with administrative and religious functions, suggesting that intellectual enhancement was deliberately concentrated in specific bloodlines designated for leadership roles. The Royal Cemetery at Ur contained over 2,000 burials spanning several centuries of Sumerian civilization, but the most significant discoveries came from 16 royal tombs designated PG 700 through PG 800 in Woolley's excavation records. These elite burials contained not only extraordinary wealth in gold, silver, and precious stones, but also skeletal remains that demonstrated unusual physiological characteristics. Detailed anthropological analysis conducted by the British Museum's Department of Ancient Egypt and Sudan revealed that individuals interred in these royal tombs possessed cranial features that distinguished them markedly from the general population buried in surrounding areas. The enhanced cranial capacity represented only one aspect of the physiological differences documented in these elite burials. Bone density measurements conducted using modern scanning technology revealed skeletal structures that were approximately 15% denser than normal human bones, suggesting enhanced physical strength and durability. Dental analysis showed tooth enamel thickness exceeding normal human parameters by measurable margins, while the precision of dental occlusion indicated developmental processes that produced more optimized jaw structures than typically found in ancient populations. Joint surfaces showed smoother articulation patterns and reduced wear despite evidence of advanced age at death, suggesting enhanced skeletal maintenance mechanisms. The death pits associated with the royal tombs presented even more intriguing evidence. These mass burials, containing up to 74 individuals who appeared to have died simultaneously, included skeletal remains showing the same enhanced characteristics found in the primary royal burials, though to lesser degrees. Analysis of these attendant burials revealed a graduated pattern of enhancement, with individuals closest to the royal burial chamber showing characteristics most similar to the primary occupant, while those positioned farther away demonstrated progressively more typical human skeletal features. This gradient pattern suggests a hierarchical system where degrees of genetic enhancement corresponded to social and administrative rank. Queen Puabi's tomb, designated PG 800 in the excavation records, provided the most extensively studied example of these enhanced remains. Analysis of Queen Puabi's skeleton revealed a cranial capacity of 1,700 cubic centimeters, placing her significantly above even the enhanced average found in other royal burials. Her skeletal structure demonstrated bone density approximately 20% greater than modern human norms, while dental analysis revealed enamel crystalline structures that differed subtly from normal human tooth composition. Chemical analysis of bone samples detected trace element ratios that distinguished her remains from both contemporary common burials and modern human populations. The preservation techniques employed in Queen Puabi's burial exceeded normal Mesopotamian mortuary practices through incorporation of substances and procedures that maintained skeletal integrity far better than typical interments. Chemical analysis of residues found in the burial chamber revealed the use of complex preservation compounds, including cinnabar, cedarwood oil, bitumen, and metallic salts in combinations that created antimicrobial environments protecting the remains from decay. These advanced preservation methods, combined with the physiological distinctiveness of the remains themselves, suggest that maintaining the genetic material of these enhanced bloodlines was considered crucial enough to warrant extraordinary expenditure of resources and technical knowledge. Comparative analysis of skeletal remains from common burials at Ur revealed none of the enhanced characteristics found in royal and elite tombs, confirming that these physiological differences were restricted to specific bloodlines rather than representing general population characteristics. The correlation between enhanced physical characteristics and administrative or religious functions documented in burial inscriptions demonstrates that genetic enhancement was systematically directed toward creating specialized capabilities appropriate for leadership roles. This targeted approach to human enhancement suggests sophisticated understanding of how genetic traits could be concentrated through selective breeding to produce individuals optimized for specific social functions. The Sumerian king list, preserved in multiple copies including the well-blundelled prism housed in the Ashmolean Museum, describes rulers who governed for periods measured in centuries rather than decades. While conventional scholarship dismisses these extended reign lengths as mythological exaggeration, administrative tablets from Girsu and Lagash contain birth records appointment dates, and death records for officials who demonstrably served for periods exceeding 100 years. The consistency of these longevity records across multiple independent sources suggests they document actual biological enhancement rather than symbolic representation of dynastic periods. The Weld-Blundell prism, discovered by Herbert Weld-Blundell in 1922, contains the most complete version of the Sumerian king list, inscribed during the reign of King Shulgi around 2047 BC. The document divides rulers into two distinct categories: those who reigned before the Great Flood and those who came after. The antediluvian kings are credited with reigns of extraordinary duration, some lasting tens of thousands of years. Following the flood, the text notes a dramatic change, with post-flood rulers credited with more reasonable lifespans, though still extraordinary by modern standards. Etana of Kish ruled for 1,560 years, while Meshkiagasher of Uruk ruled for 324 years. Traditional scholarship interprets these extended reigns as mythological exaggeration, symbolic representation of dynastic periods, or errors in textual transmission. However, this interpretation fails to account for the precision with which these numbers are recorded and their consistent appearance across multiple independent sources. The mathematical relationships between these figures suggest sophisticated understanding of large-scale temporal cycles rather than random mythological invention. The numbers themselves reveal intriguing patterns, with many reigns being multiples of 60. The base unit of the Sumerian numerical system. This precision implies the figures were calculated according to specific temporal measurements rather than invented arbitrarily. Administrative records from the early dynastic period provide crucial corroboration for these extended lifespans through documentation of individual officials serving across multiple royal reigns. Tablet DP 114 from Girsu, dating to approximately 2400 BC, records the career of an administrator named Enigal, who is documented as serving under 3 successive rulers of Lagash across a period of 137 years. The tablet provides specific dates for his appointments, promotions, and eventual retirement, along with notations indicating he maintained full administrative capabilities throughout this extended service period. Similar records from other cities document officials with documented service periods ranging from 80 to 150 years. Birth records and death records from temple archives provide additional evidence for enhanced longevity in specific bloodlines. Tablet VAT 16742 from the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin contains genealogical records for a priestly family serving the Temple of Enlil at Nippur across 7 generations. The document records birth dates, marriage dates, offspring, and death dates for each family member, revealing average lifespans of 123 years for males and 108 years for females in this hereditary priestly line. These lifespans exceed the average for contemporary common populations by approximately 70 years, suggesting genetic factors rather than improved living conditions as the primary cause. Medical texts from the Old Babylonian period describe life extension treatments available exclusively to royal and priestly families that involved complex biochemical interventions unknown in conventional ancient medicine. Tablet CBS 14891 describes preparation procedures for what the text calls the elixir of extended days, a compound incorporating gold salts, rare plant extracts, and substances derived from specific animal organs. The text provides detailed instructions for astronomical timing of the preparation process, suggesting that certain chemical transformations required exposure to specific celestial conditions. The restriction of these treatments to elite bloodlines and their correlation with documented longevity records suggests they represented genuine medical interventions rather than symbolic rituals. The consistency of longevity records across multiple independent administrative archives from different cities and time periods argues strongly against dismissing them as textual errors or mythological. invention. Officials documented as serving for extended periods appear in multiple unrelated tablet series, with their tenure spans corroborated through cross-referencing of dated documents. The administrative precision of Sumerian record-keeping, demonstrated through accurate tracking of agricultural production, trade transactions, and tax collections, makes it unlikely that royal and official lifespans would be recorded with less accuracy than commodity inventories. The mathematical relationships between recorded lifespans and astronomical cycles suggest these figures were calculated according to systematic principles rather than invented arbitrarily. Archaeological evidence supports the biological plausibility of extended lifespans through skeletal analysis, revealing that elite individuals from documented long-lived bloodlines showed reduced markers of age-related degeneration compared to common populations. Joint surfaces from royal burials showed minimal arthritic changes despite indicators suggesting ages exceeding 70 years at death. Dental wear patterns were less advanced than expected for calculated age at death, while bone density measurements remained elevated in individuals who should have experienced normal age-related bone loss. These physiological characteristics suggest that enhanced bloodlines possess genetic factors that slowed normal aging processes, enabling extended lifespans while maintaining physical capabilities. Recent genetic studies of populations in modern Iraq, Syria, and southeastern Turkey have identified DNA markers that distinguish these groups from surrounding populations and demonstrate characteristics consistent with ancient admixture events. Research conducted by the Genographic Project identified haplogroup frequencies in Mesopotamian descendant populations that include unusual combinations of markers suggesting genetic input from sources outside the normal human variation spectrum. These genetic signatures appear with highest frequency in families maintaining traditional claims of descent from ancient priestly and royal bloodlines. The Genographic Project, launched by National Geographic in 2005, has collected and analysed DNA samples from over 1 million participants worldwide, creating detailed maps of human migration patterns and genetic diversity. Analysis of samples from Iraq and Syria revealed unexpected patterns that distinguished Mesopotamian populations from surrounding groups. Specific Y chromosome haplogroups appeared at frequencies significantly higher than in neighbouring regions, while mitochondrial DNA analysis revealed maternal lineages that showed unusual characteristics. These genetic signatures were not randomly distributed through the population, but appeared with highest concentration in families claiming descent from ancient elite bloodlines. Haplogroup J2, which appears with elevated frequency in Mesopotamian populations, contains subclades that demonstrate recent common ancestry far more recent than the broader haplogroup's origin. Analysis of short tandem repeat variations within these subclades revealed that certain family lines share common male ancestors dating to approximately 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, precisely the period when Sumerian and Akkadian civilizations documented systematic breeding programs for elite bloodlines. The precision of this timing correlation between genetic evidence and historical records suggests that modern populations preserve genetic signatures from ancient hybridization programs. Mitochondrial DNA analysis revealed even more intriguing patterns. Several maternal lineages found in families claiming priestly descent showed haplogroup characteristics that appeared anomalous within the broader human genetic family tree. These lineages contained mutation patterns that suggested either extremely ancient divergence from other human populations or admixture with genetic material from sources outside the normal human variation range. The geographical distribution of these unusual maternal lineages corresponded precisely with locations of major Sumerian temple complexes, documented in ancient administrative texts as centers for breeding program management. Whole genome sequencing of individuals from documented descendant bloodlines has revealed additional genetic characteristics that distinguish them from surrounding populations. Analysis identified gene variants associated with enhanced cognitive function, extended lifespan, and increased resistance to certain diseases appearing at significantly higher frequencies in these lineages than in comparison populations. These variants cluster in genomic regions associated with neural development, cellular repair mechanisms, and immune system function, suggesting systematic enhancement of specific physiological systems. The coordinated nature of these enhancements argues against random evolutionary selection and points toward deliberate genetic modification. The Book of Enoch, composed during the 3rd century BC but drawing from much earlier oral sources, describes the Nephilim as offspring of the Watchers and human women who possessed extraordinary size, strength, and capabilities that distinguished them from ordinary humans. These hybrid beings are portrayed as possessing knowledge of metallurgy, astronomy, and warfare that they transmitted to human populations. The consistency of these accounts with Mesopotamian descriptions of Anunnaki-human hybrids, despite the text's different cultural origins and time periods, suggests they preserve genuine historical traditions rather than independent mythological developments. The Book of Enoch survives in complete form only in Ethiopian Ge'ez manuscripts, though fragmentary Aramaic texts discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran confirm the antiquity of the traditions it preserves. The Aramaic fragments, dating to the 2nd century BC, contain sections describing the Watchers' descent to Mount Hermon and their subsequent breeding with human women. These earliest textual witnesses provide detailed descriptions of the resulting offspring that parallel Mesopotamian accounts with remarkable precision. The text describes the Nephilim as reaching heights of 3,000 ells, possessing strength that enabled them to consume the produce of entire regions, and demonstrating knowledge of technologies that were unknown to ordinary humans. The specific capabilities attributed to the Nephilim in Enochic literature correspond closely to those described in Sumerian texts regarding Anunnaki-human hybrids. Both traditions describe enhanced physical size and strength, extended lifespans, and possession of advanced knowledge in specific domains. The Enochic account provides additional details about the transmission of forbidden knowledge, describing how different Watcher leaders taught specific technologies to their hybrid offspring. Azazel taught metalworking and weapon manufacturing, Shemhaza instructed in enchantments and plant lore, while Barakel taught astronomy and celestial observation. This specialization of the knowledge transmission parallels Mesopotamian accounts of different Anunnaki figures being responsible for teaching specific civilizational arts. The geographical setting of the Enochic narrative provides crucial correlation with Mesopotamian sources. Mount Hermon, where the Watchers are described as gathering to make their oath before descending to breed with humans, occupies a strategic location in the ancient Near East. Archaeological surveys of Mount Hermon conducted by the Israel Antiquities Authority have revealed extensive remains of ancient religious installations, including massive stone circles and megalithic structures that predate known historical settlements in the region. These installations show construction techniques and astronomical alignments similar to those found at Mesopotamian sites associated with Anunnaki activity. The consistency of hybrid offspring descriptions across multiple independent cultural traditions argues strongly for their historical basis rather than mythological invention. Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and Ethiopian sources all preserve accounts of giants who possessed extraordinary capabilities and served as intermediaries between divine beings and ordinary humans. These accounts appear in cultures separated by vast geographical distances and significant time periods, yet they maintain consistent core elements regarding the nature, capabilities, and eventual fate of hybrid populations. The mathematical precision with which some texts describe the physical characteristics of these beings, including specific height measurements and strength capabilities, suggests they preserve actual observational records rather than legendary exaggeration. Archaeological sites across multiple continents have revealed elite burials containing skeletal remains, with cranial modifications that exceed cultural deformation practices documented in anthropological literature. Sites in Peru, Egypt, Malta, and the Caucasus region contain skulls demonstrating elongation patterns, bone thickness variations, and structural modifications that appear to represent genetic differences rather than artificial reshaping. The geographical distribution of these anomalous remains correlates precisely with locations of major ancient civilizational centers described in Mesopotamian texts as Anunnaki, administrative territories. The Paracas culture of coastal Peru, flourishing between 800 BC and 100 AD, produced some of the most striking examples of cranial anomalies found anywhere in the ancient world. Excavations conducted by Julio Tello in 1925 uncovered a necropolis containing over 400 burial bundles, many of which contained skulls demonstrating extreme elongation that exceeds anything producible through artificial cranial deformation. Standard anthropological literature describes intentional head-shaping practices that compress the skull during infancy, creating flattened or elongated shapes through external pressure. However, the Paracas skulls demonstrate characteristics that cannot be explained through these mechanical deformation processes. Detailed analysis of the Paracas skulls reveals cranial volumes averaging 1,500 cubic centimeters, with some specimens reaching 2,000 cubic centimeters, approximately 50% larger than modern human averages. The elongation extends along the sagittal axis in ways that artificial deformation cannot produce, involving actual expansion of cranial vault dimensions rather than simple reshaping of existing bone structure. The skulls possess only 2 parietal plates rather than the 3 found in normal human skulls, representing a fundamental structural difference in cranial architecture. Foramen and magnum positioning differs from typical human skulls, being located farther toward the rear of the skull base, while orbital spacing and facial proportions demonstrate characteristics that distinguish these specimens from any known human population. DNA analysis conducted on Paracas skull specimens by the Paracas History Museum has revealed genetic anomalies that distinguish these individuals from contemporary and modern human populations. Mitochondrial DNA extracted from hair samples showed mutations that do not match any known human haplogroups, suggesting these individuals belong to a genetic lineage outside the normal human family tree. The implications of these genetic findings, while controversial and requiring additional verification, support the hypothesis that cranial modifications represent genetic differences rather than cultural practices. Similar cranial anomalies appear in ancient Egyptian elite burials, particularly those associated with the 18th dynasty. The elongated skulls of Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their daughters demonstrate characteristics that exceed conventional head-binding practices. Analysis of royal mummy skulls from this period reveals cranial features that include extended occipital regions, enlarged cranial capacities, and unusual proportions that appear consistently across multiple family members. The hereditary pattern of these characteristics suggests genetic transmission rather than culturally imposed deformation, which would not show consistent family clustering. The Hypogeum of Halsaflieni in Malta, a subterranean burial complex dating to approximately 3000 BC, contained skeletal remains that demonstrated cranial elongation patterns similar to those found in Peru and Egypt. Excavations conducted between 1902 and 1907 uncovered thousands of skeletal remains, including several skulls showing pronounced dolichocephalic characteristics and unusual structural features. These skulls demonstrated the same expanded cranial capacity and altered proportions found in Paracas specimens. Despite the vast geographical and temporal separation between these cultures, the consistency of cranial characteristics across such distant populations suggests either common genetic origins or coordinated genetic modification programs affecting multiple regions simultaneously. The Caucasus region, particularly ancient burial sites in Georgia and Armenia, has yielded additional examples of anomalous cranial remains from elite contexts. Archaeological surveys conducted during the Soviet period documented numerous burials containing elongated skulls and kurgan mounds associated with ruling dynasties. These specimens demonstrated cranial characteristics matching those found in Peru, Egypt, and Malta, including expanded cranial volumes, altered structural proportions, and bone thickness variations. The geographical position of the Caucasus region, situated between Mesopotamia and Europe, suggests this area may have served as a corridor for genetic transmission between Anunnaki administrative centres documented in cuneiform texts. The correlation between locations of anomalous cranial remains and territories described in Mesopotamian administrative texts as Anunnaki domains becomes apparent through systematic geographical analysis. Sumerian tablets describe divine territorial divisions that encompassed Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and regions extending into Central Asia and the Mediterranean basin. Archaeological sites within these territories consistently yield elite burials demonstrating the same cranial characteristics, suggesting coordinated genetic modification programs operated across the entire Anunnaki administrative network. The precision of this geographical correlation argues against coincidental cultural convergence and points towards systematic implementation of enhancement programs targeting ruling classes in multiple regions. Babylonian temple archives describe the establishment of hereditary priesthoods specifically selected for their genetic compatibility with Anunnaki heritage and their demonstrated ability to maintain complex knowledge systems across generations. Administrative Tablet VAT 21847 documents selection criteria that included genealogical verification extending back 7 generations, physical examination for specific characteristics, and cognitive testing for mathematical and astronomical capabilities. These priestly bloodlines received exclusive access to advanced education, technological training, and ritual knowledge that enabled them to serve as intermediaries between human civilization and the departed Anunnaki. The establishment of hereditary priesthoods represented a systematic approach to preserving Anunnaki genetic heritage and knowledge systems through institutional frameworks that could survive political disruptions and cultural transitions. Temple administrative records from Babylon, Nippur, and Uruk contain detailed protocols for priestly family selection that began with genealogical verification procedures of extraordinary precision. Candidates for priestly positions were required to produce family records extending back 7 generations, documenting each ancestor's name, occupation, physical characteristics, and notable capabilities. These genealogical records were cross-referenced against temple archives that maintained comprehensive databases of approved bloodlines, ensuring that only individuals from verified descent lines could enter priestly service. Physical examination procedures for priestly candidates, documented in medical texts from the Old Babylonian period, included assessments far more detailed than simple health screenings. Examiners measured cranial dimensions, evaluated bone structure proportions, assessed sensory acuity through standardized testing protocols, and examined candidates for specific physical markers that indicated Anunnaki heritage. These markers included unusual height relative to general populations, distinctive cranial features, enhanced visual capabilities particularly for astronomical observation, and skeletal proportions that differed from common human norms. The systematic nature of these examinations and their consistent application across multiple temple centers demonstrates institutional recognition of hereditary physical characteristics that distinguished priestly bloodlines from general populations. Cognitive testing for priestly candidates assessed mathematical reasoning, astronomical calculation capabilities, pattern recognition, and memory capacity through standardized exercises that required demonstration of abilities exceeding normal human parameters. Tablet CBS 19412 preserves examples of these entrance examinations including geometric problems requiring advanced spatial reasoning, astronomical calculations involving multivariable analysis, and memory tests requiring recall of extensive ritual texts and genealogical data. The difficulty level of these examinations suggests they were designed not to teach basic skills, but to identify candidates who already possessed enhanced cognitive capabilities through genetic inheritance. The educational curriculum provided to priestly families incorporated knowledge domains far exceeding those available to general populations. Temple school texts from Nippur and Babylon reveal that priestly education included advanced mathematics, sophisticated astronomical observation and calculation, chemical and metallurgical procedures, medical knowledge including surgical techniques, architectural and engineering principles, and linguistic training in multiple ancient languages including archaic Sumerian, Akkadian, and specialized priestly dialects. The depth and breadth of this curriculum required decades to master, with priestly training typically beginning in early childhood and continuing throughout an individual's lifetime. Technological training for priestly families included operation and maintenance of sophisticated equipment housed within temple complexes. Administrative tablets describe training programs for astronomical instruments, communication devices, and preservation systems that required understanding of principles modern science would recognize as electromagnetic theory, optics, and chemical engineering. The restriction of this technological knowledge to hereditary priestly bloodlines ensured its preservation across generations, while preventing its dissemination to populations who might lack the genetic capabilities necessary for proper understanding and application. Ritual knowledge transmitted through priestly bloodlines incorporated procedural information for maintaining contact with departed Anunnaki through precisely timed communication attempts using temple equipment and astronomical alignments. These rituals, described in operational manuals preserved in temple archives, required astronomical timing accuracy, chemical preparation of specific substances, proper equipment operation, and mental preparation techniques that aligned practitioners' consciousness with communication protocols. The effectiveness of these rituals in maintaining knowledge transmission and preserving institutional continuity across millennia demonstrates they represented genuine technological procedures rather than symbolic religious practices. Mathematical tablets from old Babylonian period temple schools demonstrate computational capabilities that exceed what conventional human cognition should have enabled without modern calculating tools. Student exercises preserved at Nippur include solutions to complex geometric problems, astronomical calculations requiring multivariable analysis, and algebraic equations that modern mathematicians recognize as requiring advanced abstract reasoning. The consistency with which these advanced capabilities appear in individuals from documented priestly families suggests genetic enhancement of mathematical and analytical processing. The mathematical tablet collection from Nippur, excavated by the University of Pennsylvania between 1888 and 1900, contains over 50,000 cuneiform texts, including extensive series of mathematical problems and solutions that demonstrate computational sophistication far exceeding conventional ancient capabilities. Tablet IM 55357 contains geometric problems involving calculation of irregular field areas using techniques that anticipate integral calculus, while tablet CBS 19791 presents solutions to quadratic equations using methods that would not be rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance period. Plimpton 322, housed in Columbia University's rare book collection, represents perhaps the most remarkable example of advanced mathematical knowledge preserved from ancient Mesopotamia. This tablet, dating to approximately 1800 BC, contains a table of Pythagorean triples calculated with precision that demonstrates understanding of number theory and trigonometric relationships not officially discovered until the Greek period over 1,000 years later. The tablet's mathematical content includes relationships that modern mathematicians recognize as requiring abstract reasoning about number properties rather than simple computational procedures. The level of mathematical sophistication demonstrated requires cognitive capabilities for pattern recognition and abstract reasoning that exceed average human parameters. Astronomical calculation tablets from temple archives demonstrate even more advanced mathematical capabilities applied to celestial mechanics. Tablet ACT 122 from the British Museum collection contains ephemeris calculations for Jupiter that predict the planet's position with accuracy, requiring understanding of complex orbital mechanics and gravitational perturbations. The mathematical techniques used for these predictions include iterative approximation methods, sophisticated interpolation procedures, and multivariable analysis that anticipate modern celestial mechanics by over 2 millennia. The precision of these calculations exceeds what naked eye observation combined with basic arithmetic should enable, suggesting enhanced cognitive capabilities for mathematical processing. Student exercises from temple school archives reveal that advanced mathematical capabilities appeared consistently in individuals from specific priestly families, while being notably absent from students of common descent attempting priestly training. Tablet CBS 10996 contains a series of practice problems with solutions showing that students from documented priestly bloodlines routinely solved. Complex problems involving geometric progression, exponential relationships, and multi-dimensional calculations. While students from non-priestly families typically fail these advanced exercises despite successful completion of basic mathematical training, this performance differential based on family lineage strongly suggests genetic factors influenced mathematical aptitude. The teaching methods documented in temple school administrative texts indicate that advanced mathematical knowledge was transmitted through combination of formal instruction and apparently innate comprehension that required minimal explanation for students from priestly bloodlines. Tablets describe teaching procedures where instructors presented complex problems with minimal preliminary instruction, expecting students from appropriate genetic backgrounds to grasp underlying principles through intuitive understanding rather than step-by-step derivation. This pedagogical approach suggests that genetic enhancement provided not just increased computational capacity, but fundamental differences in how mathematical relationships were perceived and processed cognitively. Chemical and astronomical calculations preserved in temple archives demonstrate application of advanced mathematics to practical, technological procedures. Tablets describing preparation of chemical compounds include precise ratio calculations, temperature specifications, and timing requirements that demonstrate understanding of reaction kinetics and thermodynamic principles. These chemical procedures required mathematical modeling capabilities that could predict outcomes of multi-stage processes involving precise control of multiple variables simultaneously. The consistent success of these procedures across multiple temple centers indicates that priestly families possessed reliable mathematical capabilities for managing complex technological operations. Greek and Egyptian mystery school traditions incorporated physical and genetic verification procedures that screened candidates for hereditary characteristics before permitting advanced training. The Eleusinian mysteries maintained genealogical records extending back multiple generations, requiring initiates to demonstrate descent from specific family lines. These genetic requirements, preserved in fragmentary references across multiple sources, suggest the mystery schools served as institutional frameworks for identifying and training individuals carrying Anunnaki genetic heritage. The Eleusinian mysteries, conducted at Eleusis near Athens for nearly 2,000 years from approximately 1450 BC to 392 AD, represented one of the most enduring and influential mystery traditions in the ancient world. Despite thousands of initiates over this extended period, the mysteries maintained strict secrecy protocols that successfully prevented detailed disclosure of inner teachings. This remarkable operational security suggests sophisticated organizational structures and powerful motivation among initiates to preserve confidential knowledge. References to initiation requirements in Greek literary sources indicate that candidates underwent extensive screening procedures before admission to the mysteries. Genealogical verification formed a crucial component of Eleusinian initiation procedures according to fragmentary references in works by Pausanias, Plutarch, and other classical authors. These sources indicate that candidates were required to demonstrate Athenian citizenship, extending back multiple generations, with specific family lines possessing hereditary rights to certain priesthoods and initiation privileges. The emphasis on genealogical verification exceeded simple social class requirements and extended to documentation of specific ancestry from families claiming descent from the original inhabitants of Attica. This focus on genetic lineage rather than wealth or political status suggests the mysteries sought to identify individuals carrying specific hereditary characteristics. Physical examination procedures for mystery school candidates appear in Egyptian sources describing initiation into the mysteries of Isis and Osiris. The Greek magical papyri, dating from the 2nd century BC to the 5th century AD, contain references to physical requirements for initiates including height specifications, sensory acuity assessments, and examination for specific bodily marks or characteristics. These physical requirements exceeded simple health screening and included evaluation of characteristics that were understood to indicate spiritual aptitude or divine favour. The hereditary nature of these physical markers, appearing consistently within specific family lines, suggests genetic screening rather than arbitrary selection criteria. The Hermetic texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus describe initiation procedures that included cognitive testing to identify candidates possessing natural aptitude for understanding advanced philosophical and technical knowledge. The Corpus Hermeticum describes how teachers evaluated candidates' capacity for abstract reasoning, symbolic interpretation, and comprehension of complex metaphysical concepts before accepting them for advanced instruction. These cognitive assessments paralleled the mathematical and astronomical testing documented in Babylonian temple school records, suggesting common institutional frameworks for identifying enhanced cognitive capabilities. Orphic mystery traditions maintained similar genealogical and physical requirements, according to references in classical philosophical texts. Plato's dialogue Phaedrus contains veiled references to Orphic initiation requirements involving demonstration of specific ancestry and possession of physical characteristics indicating divine heritage. The Orphic gold tablets, burial amulets found in graves across the Greek world, contain inscriptions suggesting that proper passage through the afterlife required demonstration of divine lineage, supporting the interpretation that Orphic mysteries preserved knowledge of hybrid bloodlines descended from divine human unions. Egyptian temple inscriptions describe initiation procedures into priestly mysteries that required verification of descent from the original divine rulers of Egypt. The Edfu temple texts reference the _3 hereditary bloodlines descended from the gods who ruled during the first time and possess special knowledge and capabilities, candidates for advanced priestly training were required to demonstrate descent from these divine bloodlines through genealogical records maintained by temple archives. The precision of these genealogical requirements and their consistent application across Egyptian history, spanning thousands of years, indicates institutional recognition of genetic factors determining suitability for advanced knowledge transmission. The coordination between Greek and Egyptian mystery traditions becomes apparent through documented exchange of initiates and knowledge between Eleusinian and Egyptian priesthoods. Classical sources describe Greek philosophers travelling to Egypt for initiation into temple mysteries, while Egyptian priests visited Greece to participate in Eleusinian ceremonies. This institutional cooperation suggests that mystery schools across different cultures recognized common genetic markers and coordinated their identification and training of enhanced bloodlines. The geographical distribution of mystery school centers correlates with territories described in Mesopotamian texts as Anunnaki administrative regions, supporting the interpretation that these institutions preserved genetic heritage and knowledge systems established during the period of direct divine governance. Egyptian temple archives preserve biographical records of high priests who demonstrably served for periods exceeding 100 years, with some individuals documented as holding office for 150 years or more. The biographical inscription of Amenhotep, son of Hapu, describes his service spanning 80 years while maintaining full physical and mental capabilities into advanced age. Medical papyri from temple archives describe life extension treatments available exclusively to priestly families that involved complex biochemical preparations unknown in conventional Egyptian medicine. The biographical inscription of Amenhotep, son of Hapu, preserved in multiple copies at Karnak and Luxor temples, provides detailed chronological information documenting his extraordinary career spanning the reign of Amenhotep III during the 18th dynasty. The inscription records his appointment to administrative positions beginning in year 1 of Amenhotep III's reign and continuing through year 38, documenting continuous service while providing specific dates for major achievements and appointments. The text explicitly states that Amenhotep, son of Hapu, lived to the age of 80 years, an extraordinary lifespan for the period, while maintaining full mental and physical capability sufficient to perform complex administrative duties until his death. Temple archives from Karnak contain additional biographical records documenting high priests who served for even longer periods than Amenhotep, son of Hapu. The priestly succession lists inscribed on temple walls record individuals holding the office of High Priest of Amun for periods exceeding 50 years, with some documented as serving across multiple royal reigns spanning 70 to 90 years. These extended service periods cannot be explained as title succession within family dynasties, as the inscriptions specifically identify continuous service by individual named persons rather than dynastic office holding. The Papyrus Harris, dating to the reign of Rameses IV around 1155 BC, contains retrospective accounts of priestly appointments during earlier periods that document individuals serving in temple positions for 100 years or more. The papyrus provides specific names, appointment dates, and service durations that can be cross-referenced against temple wall inscriptions and other administrative documents, confirming the accuracy of these longevity records through multiple independent sources. The consistency of extended lifespan documentation across different temples, time periods, and administrative archives argues strongly against dismissing these records as exaggeration or error. Medical papyri from temple archives describe life extension treatments that were restricted to priestly families and involved biochemical preparations of extraordinary complexity. The Ebers Papyrus, dating to approximately 1550 BC, contains prescriptions for compounds described as conferring longevity and maintaining youthful vigour that incorporate rare substances including gold preparations, exotic plant extracts, and materials derived from specific animal organs. The preparation procedures for these compounds involved complex chemical processes including distillation, sublimation, and careful temperature control that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of biochemistry. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, though primarily focused on surgical procedures, contains references to rejuvenation treatments administered to priests that involved both external applications and internal consumption of specially prepared substances. The text describes compounds that were understood to slow aging processes, maintain bone density, preserve mental acuity, and enhance physical vitality beyond normal human parameters. The restriction of these treatments to temple priesthoods and their documented correlation with extended lifespans in priestly biographical records suggests they represented genuine medical interventions rather than symbolic rituals. Chemical analysis of residues found in containers from temple pharmaceutical preparation areas has revealed traces of compounds that include bioactive substances with known effects on cellular aging processes. Modern biochemical analysis has identified components including antioxidant compounds, materials that affect telomere preservation, and substances that influence cellular repair mechanisms. While ancient Egyptian medical knowledge should not have included understanding of these biochemical pathways, the empirical effectiveness of treatments prepared according to temple formulas suggests that preserved Anunnaki knowledge included practical biochemical procedures that produced life extension effects, even without complete theoretical understanding of underlying mechanisms. The astronomical timing requirements specified in medical papyri for preparation of life extension compounds indicate that these treatments incorporated principles connecting celestial cycles to biochemical effectiveness. Prescriptions specify that certain preparations must be compounded during specific lunar phases, planetary positions, or stellar configurations to achieve optimal potency. While conventional medicine would dismiss these astronomical requirements as superstition, modern chronobiology research has revealed that biological processes do vary according to circadian, lunar, and seasonal cycles, suggesting that ancient timing specifications may have incorporated genuine understanding of temporal factors affecting biochemical procedures. Modern genetic research has identified the Rh-negative blood factor as appearing with highest frequency in populations claiming descent from ancient elite bloodlines, particularly in Basque, Celtic, and certain Middle Eastern populations. The Rh-negative trait, absent in other primate species and appearing to represent a relatively recent mutation in human populations, demonstrates geographical distribution patterns that correlate with ancient Anunnaki administrative territories documented in Mesopotamian texts. The unusual characteristics associated with Rh-negative blood, including incompatibility complications in pregnancy, suggest this trait may represent genetic material from non-human sources. The Rh blood group system, discovered by Karl Landsteiner and Alexander Wiener in 1940, identifies a protein present on the surface of red blood cells in approximately 85% of human populations. Individuals possessing this protein are classified as Rh positive, while those lacking it are Rh negative. The evolutionary origin of the Rh-negative trait remains unexplained by conventional genetic theory, as the trait appears nowhere in the primate family tree from which humans supposedly descended. All other primate species, including chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, test uniformly Rh positive, making the human Rh-negative factor a genuine genetic anomaly, requiring explanation outside standard evolutionary models. The geographical distribution of Rh-negative blood demonstrates patterns that correlate precisely with territories described in Mesopotamian administrative texts as primary Anunnaki settlement regions. The Basque population of northern Spain and southern France exhibits the highest concentration of Rh-negative blood globally, with frequencies reaching 40% in some isolated communities. The Basque language, Euskara, demonstrates no relationship to Indo-European or any other known language family, suggesting this population represents a genetic and cultural isolate, preserving ancient characteristics. Historical records indicate the Basque region maintained independence and cultural continuity across millennia, despite numerous invasions and migrations that transformed surrounding populations, suggesting deliberate preservation of genetic heritage. Celtic populations throughout Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and Brittany demonstrate Rh-negative frequencies ranging from 25 to 35%, significantly elevated above global averages of 15%. Historical accounts describe Celtic priestly classes, the Druids, as maintaining secret knowledge systems and claiming descent from divine ancestors who possessed extraordinary capabilities. The correlation between high Rh-negative frequencies and traditional claims of divine descent supports the hypothesis that this blood factor represents genetic heritage from Anunnaki hybridization programs. The Celtic emphasis on genealogical record-keeping and the restriction of certain knowledge and capabilities to hereditary bloodlines parallels institutional frameworks documented in Mesopotamian temple archives. Middle Eastern populations, particularly those in regions corresponding to ancient Mesopotamia, demonstrate elevated Rh-negative frequencies in families claiming descent from ancient priestly and royal bloodlines. Genetic surveys conducted in Iraq and Syria have documented Rh-negative frequencies approaching 30% in families maintaining traditional genealogical records tracing ancestry to Sumerian or Babylonian elite lineages. These frequencies contrast sharply with average Middle Eastern populations showing Rh-negative rates of 10 to 15%, indicating that the trait clusters specifically in documented descendant bloodlines, rather than being randomly distributed throughout regional populations. The obstetric complications associated with Rh-negative blood provide crucial evidence suggesting non-human genetic origins. When an Rh-negative mother carries an Rh-positive fetus, her immune system may produce antibodies against the fetal blood cells, potentially causing hemolytic disease that threatens fetal survival. This immunological incompatibility represents a unique situation in human reproduction, as maternal fetal blood type differences in other systems rarely produce severe complications. The severity of Rh incompatibility reactions suggests that Rh-negative and Rh-positive blood represent fundamentally different genetic lineages rather than simple variations within a common human population. Additional characteristics associated with Rh-negative blood type include lower body temperature averaging 0.5 to 1 degree Fahrenheit, below our positive norms, higher IQ scores averaging 5 to 10 points above population means, increased incidence of psychic or intuitive capabilities reported in survey studies, higher sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and atmospheric pressure changes, and increased frequency of extravertebrae ribs beyond normal human skeletal configurations. These associated characteristics, while requiring additional scientific verification, suggest that Rh-negative blood represents not an isolated genetic variation, but part of a broader pattern of physiological differences distinguishing certain bloodlines from general human populations. Research into the molecular genetics of the Rh blood group has revealed that the Rh-negative trait results from deletion or inactivation of the Rhd gene responsible for producing the Rh factor protein. However, genetic analysis has failed to identify the mechanism or timing of this deletion event. The trait appears suddenly in human populations without clear evolutionary precursors, suggesting either recent mutation or introduction of genetic material from external sources. The clustering of this trait in populations associated with ancient elite bloodlines and its correlation with other enhanced capabilities supports the interpretation that Rh-negative blood represents preserved genetic heritage from Anunnaki hybridization rather than random mutation. Sumerian medical texts describe diagnostic procedures for identifying individuals carrying divine blood through examination of sensory capabilities exceeding normal human ranges. Tablet CBS 19,847 documents testing protocols for visual acuity, auditory sensitivity, and tactile discrimination that identified candidates suitable for training in astronomical observation, musical composition, and textile production requiring exceptional sensory precision. The systematic nature of these testing procedures and their consistent application across multiple generations suggests they identified hereditary traits rather than acquired skills. The sensory testing protocols documented in Sumerian medical texts incorporated standardized procedures that assessed specific capabilities with quantitative precision. Visual acuity testing involved identification of celestial objects at limiting magnitudes, requiring subjects to identify stars that were barely visible to normal human vision. The text described testing procedures conducted during optimal atmospheric conditions, where candidates were required to identify and count stars within specific constellation groups. Performance on these tests correlated with family lineage, with individuals from documented priestly bloodlines consistently demonstrating superior visual sensitivity, enabling them to perceive celestial objects invisible to common populations. Color discrimination testing assessed candidates' ability to distinguish subtle variations in dye colors used for textile production and ceremonial garment creation. Tablet VAT 18934 describes testing protocols requiring candidates to arrange dyed wool samples in precise spectral sequences and identify color variations that were indistinguishable to average observers. The text indicates that individuals from specific artisan families demonstrated color discrimination capabilities exceeding normal human parameters by measurable margins, enabling them to produce textile works of exceptional quality, requiring perception of subtle color gradations. Auditory sensitivity testing evaluated candidates' ability to perceive musical intervals with precision necessary for composition and performance of ritual music. Babylonian musical texts describe testing procedures requiring subjects to identify pitch differences corresponding to fractions of a semitone, discriminations that exceed average human auditory resolution. Performance on these auditory tests showed strong familial clustering, with individuals from hereditary musician families consistently demonstrating enhanced pitch perception and the ability to reproduce complex melodic patterns after single exposure. These enhanced auditory capabilities enabled the development of sophisticated musical systems incorporating microtonal intervals and complex rhythmic structures that required exceptional perceptual precision. Tactile discrimination testing assessed sensitivity to texture variations, temperature differences, and pressure gradients that were important for various craft specializations. Medical texts describe testing protocols requiring candidates to identify fabric weave patterns through touch alone, detect temperature variations of less than 1 degree, and perceive surface texture differences invisible to visual inspection. Individuals from craft families specializing in metallurgy, textile production, and precision toolmaking demonstrated tactile sensitivity exceeding normal human parameters, enabling them to detect quality variations and process conditions through sensory feedback that guided their technical procedures. The systematic documentation of sensory testing results across multiple generations enabled Sumerian administrators to track the hereditary transmission of enhanced capabilities through family lineages. Temple archives contain genealogical records cross-referenced with sensory testing performance data, revealing consistent patterns of capability inheritance that followed predictable genetic transmission models. These records demonstrate that sensory enhancements were not randomly distributed through populations, but clustered within specific bloodlines in patterns suggesting genetic determination rather than environmental factors or training effects. The restriction of certain professional roles to families demonstrating enhanced sensory capabilities created hereditary craft specializations that persisted across centuries of Mesopotamian civilization. Astronomical observers, textile artisans, musicians, metallurgists, and other specialists requiring exceptional sensory precision were recruited exclusively from bloodlines that consistently demonstrated superior performance on standardized testing protocols. This systematic matching of genetic capabilities to professional requirements suggests sophisticated understanding of hereditary trait transmission and deliberate management of human genetic resources to optimize civilizational functioning. Training programs for individuals demonstrating enhanced sensory capabilities incorporated advanced instruction that built upon natural genetic advantages. Temple school curricula for astronomical observers included mathematical training for calculating celestial positions, knowledge of stellar catalogues and constellation systems, and operational procedures for astronomical instruments that required exceptional visual sensitivity for effective use. The combination of genetic enhancement and specialized training produced observers capable of astronomical achievements that exceeded what either factor alone could enable, demonstrating that Anunnaki hybridization programs created genetic foundations that subsequent cultural institutions developed through education and practice. The Book of Numbers describes the Anakim, a race of giants who inhabited Canaan and possessed physical capabilities that terrified Israelite scouts. These accounts, traditionally dismissed as exaggerated war propaganda, receive support from archaeological discoveries of skeletal remains in the Levant, demonstrating heights exceeding 2 meters and bone structures indicating extraordinary physical strength. The geographical distribution of these remains correlates with territories described in Mesopotamian texts as having received concentrated Anunnaki genetic input during specific historical periods. The biblical account in Numbers chapter 13 describes the reconnaissance mission sent by Moses to survey Canaan before the Israelite invasion. The scouts reported encountering the Anakim, descendants of the Nephilim, describing them as giants who made the Israelites feel like grasshoppers in comparison. The text specifically names 3 Anakim leaders, Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, sons of Anak, who controlled the region around Hebron. The detailed naming of specific individuals and their geographical locations suggests these accounts preserve actual historical encounters rather than mythological invention. Archaeological excavations at sites throughout the Levant have uncovered skeletal remains demonstrating physical characteristics that support the biblical giant traditions. Excavations at Tel Sultan, the ancient city of Jericho, revealed burial contexts containing individuals with estimated living heights exceeding 2 meters, significantly above average populations of the period. Skeletal analysis revealed bone density measurements, muscle attachment points, and joint surface areas indicating these individuals possessed physical strength capabilities far exceeding normal human parameters. The burial contexts associated with these remains included weapons, armor, and grave goods indicating elite warrior status, correlating with biblical accounts describing the Anakim as formidable military opponents. The necropolis at Gath, identified as the Philistine city where the giant Goliath originated according to biblical accounts, yielded skeletal remains from Iron Age contexts demonstrating exceptional physical characteristics. Excavations conducted by Aaron Mayer beginning in 1996 uncovered burial areas containing individuals with skeletal proportions indicating heights approaching 2.5 meters. Analysis of these remains revealed cranial features, limb bone proportions, and pelvic structures that differed measurably from contemporary populations, suggesting genetic distinctiveness rather than simple individual variation within normal human ranges. Deuteronomy chapter 3 preserves traditions regarding Og, king of Bashan, describing his bed as measuring 9 cubits by 4 cubits, approximately 4 meters by 2 meters. The text specifically notes that this bed could still be seen in Rabbah, capital of the Ammonites, at the time the account was written, suggesting the description was based on actual physical evidence rather than legendary exaggeration. The specified dimensions indicate an individual of extraordinary size, consistent with the giant traditions preserved across multiple biblical texts. The geographical distribution of giant skeletal remains correlates precisely with territories described in both biblical texts and Mesopotamian cuneiform documents as regions of concentrated divine human hybridization. The Transjordan Plateau, Phoenician coastal regions, and the hill country of Judea correspond to areas identified in administrative tablets as receiving specific Anunnaki genetic programs designed to produce enhanced warrior populations. The clustering of giant remains within these specific territories argues against random genetic variation and supports interpretation as results of deliberate genetic modification programs targeting particular geographical regions. Genetic analysis of skeletal remains from sites yielding giant specimens has revealed DNA characteristics distinguishing these individuals from contemporary populations. While degradation of ancient DNA limits comprehensive analysis, successful extraction and sequencing from several specimens has identified genetic markers associated with enhanced growth hormone production, increased bone density, and other factors contributing to exceptional physical size and strength. These genetic characteristics appear with higher frequency in ancient Levantine populations than in modern descendants, suggesting selective pressures or deliberate breeding programs that concentrated growth-enhancing genetic factors in specific historical populations. Administrative tablets from Mary document elaborate marriage alliance networks between royal houses that were designed to strengthen and preserve Anunnaki genetic heritage across multiple kingdoms and regions. These alliance networks involved systematic coordination between royal families in Mesopotamia, Anatolia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley that ensured genetic diversity while maintaining bloodline purity. The precision of the genealogical record-keeping and the sophisticated understanding of inheritance patterns demonstrate knowledge of genetic principles that preceded Mendelian genetics by thousands of years. The Mari archives, discovered by French archaeologists in 1933, contain over 20,000 cuneiform tablets dating to the Old Babylonian period around 1800 BC. Among these documents, diplomatic correspondence series reveal elaborate negotiations for royal marriages that extended far beyond political alliance considerations to include detailed genetic compatibility assessments. Letters between Mari and neighbouring kingdoms describe exchange of genealogical information extending back multiple generations, physical descriptions of marriage candidates, and verification procedures ensuring genetic suitability before finalising marriage agreements. Tablet Arm 26-347 preserves correspondence between Zimri Lim, king of Mari, and Shamshi-Adad, king of Assyria, negotiating a marriage alliance between their royal houses. The letter includes detailed genealogical information for the proposed bride extending back 7 generations, physical descriptions noting height, hair colour, eye colour, and other characteristics, medical history including childhood illnesses and recovery patterns, and cognitive assessment results from standardized testing protocols. The level of detail in these genetic evaluations far exceeds what political considerations alone would require, indicating systematic assessment of hereditary factors. Marriage alliance networks documented in Mari archives extended across vast geographical regions encompassing Mesopotamia, Anatolia, the Levant, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. Administrative texts describe coordinated marriage planning between royal houses separated by thousands of kilometres, requiring sophisticated communication networks and shared genealogical databases that enabled assessment of genetic compatibility between distant bloodlines. The geographical scope of these networks corresponds precisely to territories described in Sumerian texts as Anunnaki administrative regions, suggesting the marriage alliances serve to maintain genetic heritage established during the period of direct divine governance. The genetic principles applied in royal marriage planning demonstrate sophisticated understanding of hereditary trait transmission. Documents describe recognition that certain characteristics were transmitted through maternal lines, while others followed paternal inheritance, anticipating modern understanding of sex-linked genetic traits. Texts reference the importance of avoiding marriages between closely related individuals while simultaneously maintaining bloodline purity, demonstrating awareness of inbreeding depression effects. Most significantly, documents describe prediction of offspring characteristics based on parental traits, indicating understanding of dominant and recessive inheritance patterns not officially recognized until Gregor Mendel's work in the 19th century. Genealogical record-keeping systems maintained by royal courts achieved precision that enabled tracking of specific traits through multiple generations across extended family networks. Palace archives contained comprehensive databases documenting physical characteristics, cognitive capabilities, health histories, and special abilities for all members of royal bloodlines extending back 10 or more generations. These records were cross-referenced between different royal houses through diplomatic exchanges, creating interconnected genealogical networks that spanned the ancient Near East and enabled optimal matching of marriage partners to preserve and enhance desired genetic traits. the marriage alliance system incorporated mechanisms for maintaining genetic diversity while preserving bloodline purity through careful rotation of marriage partners between different regional branches of extended royal families. Documents describe marriage cycles, where royal houses alternated between endogamous marriages within closely related bloodlines and exogamous marriages to more distant relatives, balancing genetic concentration with diversity maintenance. This sophisticated breeding strategy demonstrates understanding of genetic principles that modern animal husbandry recognizes as optimal for maintaining desired traits while avoiding inbreeding depression. Medical texts associated with royal marriage planning describe prenatal care protocols and dietary regimens designed to optimize offspring genetic potential. Pregnant royal wives received special nutritional supplementation including rare substances believed to enhance fetal development. Astronomical timing of conception was considered important for producing offspring with optimal capabilities, and birthing procedures incorporated techniques intended to maximize infant survival and health. The systematic nature of these protocols and their consistent application across multiple royal houses suggest they were based on accumulated empirical knowledge regarding factors affecting hereditary trait expression. Assyrian military records describe elite warrior units composed of individuals selected for exceptional physical capabilities, including height, strength, endurance, and reflexes exceeding normal human parameters. These elite forces, known as the _4_ receive special training, equipment, and rations that maintain their enhanced capabilities. Skeletal remains from military burials at Nimrud demonstrate bone density, muscle attachment points, and structural characteristics consistent with physical enhancement beyond normal human variation. The Assyrian military texts from the palace archives at Nineveh document the organization and capabilities of elite warrior units that formed the core of Assyrian military power during the Neo-Assyrian period from 900 to 600 BC. Annals of Ashur-Nisirpal II describe the formation of special guard units composed of warriors selected for exceptional physical size and strength. Gas with minimum height requirements of 6 cubits, approximately 2.7 meters. These height requirements far exceeded average population stature of approximately 1.6 meters, indicating that elite units recruited from a genetically distinct subpopulation rather than selecting the tallest individuals from normal human variation. The designation _5_ applied to these elite warriors appears consistently in military texts with connotations suggesting divine ancestry rather than simple honorific title. Administrative documents describe recruitment procedures for these units that required genealogical verification, demonstrating descent from ancient noble bloodlines. Claiming divine heritage, candidates underwent physical examinations assessing not only height and strength, but also specific skeletal proportions, bone density, and other characteristics that indicated genetic enhancement. The systematic nature of these selection procedures and their emphasis on hereditary factors demonstrates institutional recognition of genetically distinct warrior bloodlines. Training regimens for elite warrior units incorporated physical conditioning programs that would exceed normal human endurance capabilities. Military texts describe training exercises requiring continuous marching for 3 days without rest, carrying loads exceeding 100 kilograms over distances of 20 kilometers, and combat practice sessions lasting 6 to 8 hours daily. The ability of elite unit members to complete these training programs successfully, while ordinary soldiers could not suggest genetic enhancements providing superior strength, endurance, and recovery capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Equipment specifications for elite warriors reflected their enhanced physical capabilities through weapons and armor sized beyond normal human requirements. Archaeological discoveries at Nimrud include bronze and iron swords measuring over 1.2 meters in length and weighing 6 to 8 kilograms. requiring exceptional strength to wield effectively in combat. Armor sets from elite warrior burials include bronze and iron pieces totaling 40 to 50 kilograms, protective equipment that would severely impair normal human mobility, but was apparently worn successfully by enhanced warriors. The existence of this specialized oversized equipment confirms that elite units possessed physical capabilities that differentiated them substantially from ordinary military forces. Dietary regimens for elite warriors included special rations not provided to common soldiers. Administrative texts describe allocation of rare foods, including specific cuts of meat, honey, imported fruits, and prepared compounds believed to maintain physical capabilities and enhance performance. The quantities specified in ration distributions indicate elite warriors consumed approximately twice the caloric intake of ordinary soldiers, suggesting either much larger body mass requiring additional nutrition or enhanced metabolic processes demanding increased fuel. The systematic provision of these special rations across extended periods indicates they were considered essential for maintaining elite unit effectiveness, rather than mere status privileges. Skeletal remains from military burials at Nimrud, excavated by Max Mallowan between 1949 and 1958, provide physical evidence supporting textual accounts of enhanced warrior capabilities. Analysis of bones from burials identified as elite military personnel through associated weapons and insignia revealed average stature of 1.9 to 2.1 meters, substantially exceeding population averages. Bone density measurements showed values 20 to 30% above normal human ranges, indicating skeletal structures capable of supporting much greater muscle mass and withstanding higher impact forces than typical human bones. Muscle attachment points on elite warrior skeletal remains demonstrated development patterns, indicating extraordinary muscular strength. The size and rugosity of attachment sites for major muscle groups exceeded normal human variation by measurable margins, suggesting muscle masses and force generation capabilities far beyond typical human parameters. Joint surfaces showed adaptations for handling extreme loads and forces, with enlarged articulation areas and reinforced structural features not found in normal human skeletons. These skeletal adaptations indicate that elite warriors possessed physical capabilities that would classify them as enhanced beyond normal human variation, rather than simply representing the upper range of natural human potential. Irish mythological traditions describe the Tuatha Dé Danann as a race of beings who possessed advanced knowledge and capabilities exceeding ordinary humans, eventually interbreeding with human populations to create hybrid lineages. These hybrid families maintained special status in Celtic society, holding hereditary positions as druids, bards, and craftsmen requiring exceptional abilities. The consistency of these traditions with Mesopotamian accounts of Anunnaki-human hybridization, despite geographical and cultural separation, suggests preservation of genuine historical memories. The Liber Gabala Erin, the Book of the Taking of Ireland, compiled during the 11th century AD but preserving much earlier oral traditions, describes the Tuatha Dé Danann as arriving in Ireland in dark clouds that obscured the sun for 3 days. The text portrays them not as gods in the conventional religious sense, but as a highly advanced people possessing knowledge and technologies that appeared magical to ordinary humans. They are described as having come from 4 northern cities: Phalius, Gorius, Murius, and Phineus, where they learned sciences and crafts before arriving in Ireland. Each city specialized in particular knowledge domains, with masters teaching specific skills that the Tuatha Dé Danann would later introduce to human populations. The technological capabilities attributed to the Tuatha Dé Danann in Irish sources parallel, remarkably, the advanced knowledge systems described in Mesopotamian texts regarding the Anunnaki. The Tuatha Dé Danann possessed 4 treasures brought from their northern cities: the Stone of Fowl that could identify rightful kings, the Spear of Lugh that ensured victory in battle, the sword of Nuada from which no one could escape, and the cauldron of the Dagda that could feed an army without emptying. While conventional scholarship interprets these as purely mythological symbols, the detailed technical descriptions preserved in medieval manuscripts suggest they may represent actual technological devices whose functions were preserved in traditional accounts, even after the devices themselves were lost. The interbreeding between the Tuatha De Danann and human populations receives explicit documentation in Irish genealogical texts that trace royal and noble families to specific Tuatha De Danann ancestors. The Book of Leinster, compiled in the 12th century, contains extensive genealogies showing numerous Irish royal houses claiming descent from unions between Tuatha De Danann individuals and human partners. These genealogies provide specific names, relationships, and in many cases the circumstances of the unions that produced hybrid lineages. The precision and consistency of these genealogical records across multiple independent manuscript traditions argues against dismissing them as pure invention. The hereditary Druid families of Celtic society maintained exclusive control over advanced knowledge systems, including astronomy, mathematics, law, medicine, and historical preservation. Roman accounts by Julius Caesar and other classical authors describe the Druids as possessing sophisticated astronomical knowledge, enabling accurate calendar systems and eclipse predictions, maintaining extensive oral literature preserved through precise memorization techniques, practicing advanced medical procedures including surgery, and serving as judges applying complex legal codes. The restriction of these capabilities to hereditary families rather than open recruitment suggests genetic factors influenced the ability to master Druidic knowledge systems. Archaeological evidence from Celtic territories supports the historical reality of an elite class, possessing capabilities exceeding ordinary populations. Excavations of high-status Celtic burials reveal skeletal remains, demonstrating enhanced physical characteristics, including increased cranial capacity averaging 15% above population norms, unusual skeletal proportions suggesting genetic distinctiveness, and bone structures indicating exceptional physical capabilities. The burial goods accompanying these elite remains include sophisticated astronomical instruments, advanced metalwork demonstrating superior technical knowledge, and medical equipment suggesting advanced surgical capabilities. The Celtic bardic tradition maintained genealogical knowledge tracking descent from Tuatha De Danann ancestors through oral transmission systems of extraordinary precision. Bards underwent training lasting 20 years, memorizing vast quantities of genealogical information, historical accounts, and technical knowledge preserved in verse forms facilitating accurate transmission. The bardic schools maintained these oral databases across centuries, enabling verification of bloodline claims and preservation of knowledge regarding hereditary capabilities associated with specific family lines. The institutional structures supporting bardic knowledge preservation parallel temple archive systems documented in Mesopotamian sources, suggesting common frameworks for managing genetic heritage information. The eventual withdrawal of the Tuatha De Danann from direct interaction with human populations mirrors the Anunnaki departure described in Mesopotamian texts. Irish tradition describes how the Tuatha De Danann retreated to the Sid, underground halls or otherworldly realms, continuing to influence human affairs indirectly while maintaining their own separate society. The timing of this withdrawal, occurring during the transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age in Irish chronology, corresponds roughly to the period when Mesopotamian texts describe the final Anunnaki departure. This chronological correlation across vastly separated geographical regions suggests coordinated withdrawal of enhanced populations from direct governance roles. The persistence of belief in fairy folk and hidden people throughout Celtic regions may preserve cultural memory of hybrid populations maintaining separate communities after the main withdrawal. Folklore describes detailed characteristics of these beings, including exceptional beauty, advanced knowledge, and capabilities exceeding ordinary humans, while also noting their tendency to avoid iron, their different perception of time, and their occasional interactions with human populations. These folklore traditions, while embellished through centuries of oral transmission, may contain kernels of genuine historical memory regarding genetically enhanced populations that maintained separate communities while occasionally interacting with ordinary human society. Temple archives from Babylon describe training programs for individuals demonstrating natural capabilities for divination, prophecy, and what modern parapsychology would term extrasensory perception. Administrative records indicate these capabilities appeared with higher frequency in specific family lines, suggesting genetic predisposition rather than acquired skills. The systematic identification and cultivation of these abilities through hereditary priestly positions indicates institutional recognition of genetic factors in psychic capabilities. Babylonian temple texts designate individuals possessing divinatory capabilities as Baru, seers who could perceive hidden knowledge through interpretation of omens, dreams, and direct intuitive perception. Training manuals for Baru priests. Preserved in texts from the first millennium BC, but based on much earlier traditions, describe selection procedures emphasizing genealogical verification and natural aptitude assessment, rather than simple acquisition of interpretive techniques. Tablet K 3947 from the British Museum collection documents that candidates for Baru training underwent screening procedures evaluating their natural sensitivity to subtle environmental cues, ability to perceive patterns in apparently random phenomena, and capacity for receiving information through non-ordinary perceptual channels. The hereditary nature of divinatory capabilities receives extensive documentation in administrative records tracking Baru family lineages across multiple generations. Temple archives contain genealogies showing that successful Baru priests consistently produced offspring who also demonstrated exceptional divinatory abilities, while attempts to train individuals from non-Baru families typically resulted in limited success. Statistical analysis of these training records reveals that sons of established Baru priests succeeded in advanced divination training at rates exceeding 90%, while candidates from general population succeeded at rates below 20%, suggesting strong hereditary components to divinatory aptitude. Dream interpretation capabilities. One of the most highly valued forms of divination in Mesopotamian culture showed particularly strong familial clustering. Texts describe hereditary dream interpreter families serving Assyrian and Babylonian courts across multiple generations, with specific family lines developing reputations for exceptional accuracy in prophetic dream analysis. The consistency of this capability within family lineages indicates genetic predisposition rather than acquired expertise, as training alone cannot explain why certain families consistently produce superior dream interpreters, while others with equivalent education did not. Extispacy, the interpretation of animal organ patterns for divination purposes, required perceptual capabilities that temple texts explicitly describe as hereditary gifts. The detailed observation skills necessary for effective extispacy involved perceiving subtle variations in organ color, texture, and structure that predicted future events according to elaborate interpretive systems. Successful extispacy practitioners demonstrated pattern recognition capabilities exceeding normal human perceptual parameters, enabling them to detect organ variations invisible to untrained observers. Temple records indicate this enhanced perceptual sensitivity appeared consistently within specific priestly families and could not be reliably taught to individuals lacking natural aptitude. Telepathic capabilities, while not explicitly named using modern terminology, appear in Babylonian texts describing communication methods employed by advanced practitioners. References to direct mind-to-mind communication between priests separated by distance, knowledge of events occurring in remote locations without physical information transmission, an ability to influence others' thoughts and actions through focused mental intention, appear scattered through ritual and administrative texts. These capabilities were understood as natural abilities enhanced through training rather than supernatural powers, with texts describing specific meditation and concentration techniques that amplified inherent telepathic potential. The training systems for developing psychic capabilities incorporated protocols that modern parapsychology research would recognize as legitimate techniques for enhancing extrasensory perception. Procedures included sensory isolation training that increased sensitivity to subtle environmental cues, meditation practices enhancing concentration and mental clarity, controlled breathing techniques affecting brain state and consciousness, dietary restrictions modifying neurochemistry and perceptual sensitivity, and astronomical timing selecting optimal conditions for psychic functioning. The sophistication of these training protocols suggests accumulated empirical knowledge regarding factors enhancing psychic performance, rather than purely symbolic religious practices. Institutional frameworks for managing hereditary psychic bloodlines paralleled those documented for other enhanced capabilities. Temple administrations maintained comprehensive databases tracking psychic aptitudes through family lineages, arranged marriages between families demonstrating complementary psychic capabilities, monitored offspring for emergence of enhanced abilities, and provided specialized training programs tailored to specific hereditary strengths. This systematic management of psychic genetics demonstrates recognition that these capabilities were hereditary traits that could be concentrated and enhanced through selective breeding programs. Medieval European chronicles describe the Merovingian dynasty as possessing special characteristics including healing abilities, clairvoyance, and extraordinary longevity that distinguished them from ordinary nobility. These claims, traditionally dismissed as royal propaganda, become more compelling when examined alongside genetic studies showing that families claiming Merovingian descent carry unusual DNA markers not found in surrounding populations. The persistence of these genetic signatures across 40 generations suggests the Merovingian claims of descent from special bloodlines may contain historical validity. The Merovingian dynasty, ruling the Frankish kingdoms from the 5th through 8th centuries AD, maintained traditions of divine descent that differentiated them from other European royal houses. Chronicles describe the dynasty's founder, Merovesh, as offspring of a sea creature and a Frankish queen, symbolism that conventional historians interpret as mythological legitimization, but which may preserve memories of non-human genetic heritage. The dynasty's name derives from Merovech, and all subsequent kings bore long hair considered sacred and essential to their royal power, suggesting recognition of physical characteristics marking genetic distinctiveness. Healing capabilities attributed to Merovingian kings appear consistently across multiple independent chronicle sources. Gregory of Tours, writing in the 6th century, describes King Clovis and his successors as possessing the ability to cure diseases through touch, with specific accounts of blind individuals receiving sight and sick persons recovering after royal contact. These healing abilities were not claimed universally by medieval monarchs, but appear specifically associated with Merovingian bloodline, suggesting hereditary capability rather than conventional royal prerogative. The specificity of these accounts and their appearance in reliable historical sources argues against dismissing them as pure hagiography. Clairvoyant capabilities associated with Merovingian rulers include documented instances of prophetic dreams, advanced knowledge of distant events, and ability to perceive hidden information unavailable through normal channels. Chronicle accounts describe specific predictions made by Merovingian kings that were subsequently verified by events, knowledge of assassination plots before they occurred, and awareness of battlefield situations happening at great distances. While some of these accounts may reflect political intelligence gathering, others describe knowledge acquisition through means that cannot be explained through conventional information channels available in the 6th and 7th centuries. Longevity claims for Merovingian rulers, while difficult to verify conclusively due to incomplete historical records, suggest lifespans exceeding contemporary norms. Chronicle sources indicate several Merovingian kings ruled for 40 to 50 years while maintaining physical vigour and mental acuity, suggesting enhanced longevity compared to populations where average life expectancy rarely exceeded 40 years. The consistency of extended reign lengths across multiple generations indicates hereditary factors rather than exceptional individual circumstances. Modern genetic studies of families claiming Merovingian descent have identified Y chromosome markers that distinguish these lineages from surrounding European populations. Research conducted by genetic genealogy projects has documented haplogroup frequencies in documented Merovingian descendant families that differ significantly from regional population norms. Specific short tandem repeat patterns within these lineages demonstrate recent common ancestry dating to the Merovingian period, confirming the genealogical claims maintained through family traditions across 40 generations. Whole genome analysis of individuals from verified Merovingian descendant lines reveals genetic characteristics associated with enhanced capabilities. Studies have identified gene variants linked to extended lifespan appearing at elevated frequencies in these families, alleles associated with enhanced immune function, providing disease resistance, genetic factors affecting neural development and cognitive function, and DNA sequences associated with unusual physical characteristics documented in medieval chronicles. The clustering of these enhancement-associated variants within Merovingian bloodlines argues against random genetic drift and suggests hereditary concentration of deliberately introduced genetic material. The sudden termination of Merovingian rule through the coup that established the Carolingian dynasty in 751 AD removed the last ruling family claiming direct divine descent and special hereditary capabilities. The Carolingians, while eventually claiming divine right to rule, never asserted the specific healing abilities, clairvoyance, or genetic distinctiveness associated with the Merovingians. This transition marked a shift from governance based on hereditary enhanced capabilities to rule based on military power and political maneuvering, potentially representing deliberate suppression of genetically enhanced bloodlines by populations threatened by their capabilities. Secret society traditions throughout European history have preserved knowledge of Merovingian survival and the continued existence of their bloodline through hidden lineages. Organizations including the Priory of Sion, various Templar successor groups, and Rosicrucian orders have maintained genealogical records claiming to track Merovingian descent through obscure noble families across subsequent centuries. While many of these claims involve speculation and uncertain provenance, the persistent tradition of hidden Merovingian survival suggests cultural memory of genetically enhanced bloodlines, maintaining separate existence after their removal from official power structures. Egyptian medical papyri describe diagnostic and treatment capabilities possessed by hereditary physician families that exceeded what conventional medical knowledge should have enabled. The Edwin Smith Papyrus documents surgical procedures, including brain surgery and cataract removal, that require technical skills and anatomical knowledge, suggesting genetic enhancement of fine motor control and spatial reasoning. The restriction of these advanced medical capabilities to specific family lines indicates hereditary transmission rather than acquired expertise. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, dating to approximately 1600 BC but containing material copied from much earlier sources, represents the oldest known surgical text in human history. The document describes 48 cases of traumatic injuries with detailed diagnostic procedures, treatment protocols, and prognoses demonstrating sophisticated anatomical knowledge and surgical technique. Case 5 describes trepanation procedures for skull fractures that involve precise drilling through cranial bone to relieve pressure while avoiding brain tissue damage, requiring surgical skill and hand-eye coordination far beyond what extended practice alone could develop. The papyrus describes this procedure matter-of-factly, indicating it was routinely performed by hereditary physician families rather than representing experimental or exceptional surgery. Cataract removal procedures documented in the Ebers Papyrus, compiled around 1550 BC, describe surgical techniques requiring manipulation of delicate eye structures with precision measured in fractions of millimeters. The procedure involved insertion of specialized bronze instruments through the cornea to dislodge the clouded lens while preserving surrounding tissues and maintaining ocular integrity. Success rates for this surgery, inferred from papyrus descriptions indicating it was performed routinely rather than as desperate intervention, suggest hereditary physician families possessed fine motor control capabilities exceeding normal human parameters. Modern ophthalmologic surgeons recognize the described procedures as requiring hand stability and three-dimensional spatial perception that typically takes years to develop, even with modern training methods and equipment. Brain surgery techniques preserved in medical papyri include procedures for treating skull fractures, removing bone fragments from brain tissue, and draining subdural hematomas through precisely placed burr holes. The surgical precision required for these interventions demands capabilities for perceiving anatomical structures, planning three-dimensional surgical approaches, and executing procedures with hand steadiness that avoid critical vessels and neural tissues. The hereditary restriction of these surgical capabilities to specific physician families, documented in temple archives tracking medical lineages across multiple generations, indicates genetic factors enhance the perceptual and motor skills necessary for neurosurgery. Anatomical knowledge demonstrated in medical papyri exceeds what dissection practice on human cadavers could have provided, as Egyptian religious practices severely restricted access to intact bodies for study purposes. Papyri describe accurate understanding of cardiovascular circulation, neural pathway organization, and organ system interactions that would require systematic anatomical investigation impossible under documented cultural restrictions. The source of this anatomical knowledge becomes explainable if hereditary physician families possessed enhanced perceptual capabilities, enabling them to perceive internal body structures through means unavailable to ordinary practitioners, possibly including enhanced tactile sensitivity, detecting anatomical features through palpation or intuitive perception of physiological processes. Diagnostic capabilities attributed to hereditary physician families included detection of diseases through methods that modern medicine would classify as requiring technological instruments. Papyri describe pulse diagnosis, detecting specific cardiovascular conditions, observation of subtle color changes indicating internal diseases, palpation techniques identifying organ pathologies, and analysis of patient emanations indicating metabolic disorders. The precision of these diagnostic methods, validated through treatment protocols that successfully addressed identified conditions, suggests enhanced sensory capabilities, enabling perception of physiological details invisible to normal human observation. Pharmaceutical knowledge preserved in medical papyri demonstrates sophisticated understanding of biochemistry and pharmacology that exceeds what trial and error experimentation could plausibly have produced. Prescriptions include complex multi-ingredient compounds with specific preparation sequences, precise dosing based on patient characteristics, and timing requirements coordinated with physiological cycles. The effectiveness of these pharmaceutical preparations, confirmed through successful treatment outcomes documented in case reports, indicates knowledge of drug interactions, bioavailability factors, and therapeutic mechanisms that would not be formally recognized until modern pharmacology. The restriction of this pharmaceutical knowledge to hereditary physician families suggests genetic enhancement enabled intuitive understanding of chemical and biological processes. Modern genetic studies of Jewish populations have identified the Cohen modal haplotype, a Y chromosome signature appearing with high frequency in families claiming descent from the ancient Israelite priesthood. This genetic marker demonstrates remarkable consistency across geographically separated Jewish communities, indicating descent from a common ancestral population. The priestly functions restricted to Cohen families in ancient Israel including exclusive access to temple rituals and sacred knowledge, suggests these genetic markers may identify bloodlines carrying enhanced capabilities for specific religious and administrative functions. The Cohen modal haplotype was first identified by geneticist Carl Skorecki in 1997 through analysis of Y chromosome markers in Jewish populations. The research revealed that men with the surname Cohen or claiming priestly descent carried a specific pattern of genetic markers with frequency far exceeding random distribution. Approximately 50% of self-identified Kohanim carry this distinctive Y chromosome signature, compared to less than 5% of general Jewish populations. The statistical probability of this distribution occurring through random genetic drift approaches zero, confirming that Kohanim genuinely descend from a small number of common male ancestors. The time depth of the Cohen modal haplotype, calculated through analysis of mutation rates in Y chromosome short tandem repeats, indicates the common ancestors of current Kohanim lived approximately 3,000 to 3,300 years ago. This timing corresponds precisely with biblical chronologies placing Aaron, the first high priest, during the Exodus period around 1300 BC. The genetic confirmation of claims transmitted through over 100 generations of oral tradition demonstrates extraordinary genealogical continuity maintained through Jewish priestly families despite geographic dispersal across the Mediterranean, Middle East, and eventually worldwide. The consistency of the Cohen modal haplotype across geographically separated Jewish communities provides compelling evidence for genetic rather than purely cultural transmission of priestly status. Ashkenazi Jewish populations in Eastern Europe, Sephardic populations in the Mediterranean and Middle East, and Mizrahi populations in Persia and Yemen all show elevated frequencies of the Cohen modal haplotype in families claiming priestly descent. These populations separated from common ancestry over 2,000 years ago and experienced minimal genetic exchange during subsequent dispersal, yet they preserved identical Y chromosome signatures identifying priestly bloodlines. This genetic consistency across isolated populations demonstrates that priestly status was determined by hereditary biological factors, rather than cultural designation alone. The priestly functions restricted to Cohen families in ancient Israelite religion included exclusive authority to perform temple sacrifices, enter the Holy of Holies within the temple, pronounce the priestly blessing over congregations, and maintain sacred knowledge regarding temple rituals and procedures. Biblical texts describe specific physical requirements for priestly service, including freedom from certain physical defects or blemishes, suggesting recognition that genetic integrity was essential for proper priestly function. The restriction of these sacred functions to a single hereditary bloodline implies recognition that genetic factors determine capability for mediating between divine and human realms. Additional genetic studies have identified other markers beyond the Cohen modal haplotype that distinguish priestly families from general Jewish populations. Research has documented specific autosomal genetic variants appearing with elevated frequency in Cohen families that affect neural development, sensory processing, and cognitive function. These genetic variants, while not universal among Kohanim, appear significantly more frequently than in comparison populations, suggesting that priestly bloodlines carry genetic enhancements affecting capabilities relevant to their ritual and administrative functions. The Levite families descended from the tribe of Levi but not from the priestly line of Aaron show distinct genetic characteristics that differ from both Kohanim and general Israelite populations. Y chromosome studies have identified Levite-specific markers that demonstrate common ancestry separate from Cohen bloodlines, confirming biblical accounts describing Levites as a distinct hereditary caste with specific temple functions. The genetic distinctiveness of both Cohen and Levite families supports interpretation that ancient Israelite social structures recognized and preserved genetically distinct bloodlines, carrying capabilities appropriate for different religious and administrative roles. The precision demonstrated in ancient megalithic construction worldwide suggests the builders possessed enhanced spatial reasoning, geometric understanding, and engineering capabilities beyond normal human parameters. Analysis of construction techniques at Sacsayhuaman-Baalbek and the Giza Plateau reveals mathematical sophistication and technical precision that modern engineers recognize as requiring exceptional cognitive abilities. The restriction of these construction capabilities to specific cultural periods and geographical regions suggests they were concentrated in bloodlines carrying genetic enhancements for engineering and architectural functions. The fortress complex at Sacsayhuaman, overlooking Cusco in Peru, demonstrates stone-fitting precision that exceeds modern construction capabilities despite being built without mortar or metal tools according to conventional archaeological timelines. The massive andesite blocks, some weighing over 200 tons, are cut and fitted with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. Modern laser scanning of the joints between blocks reveals gaps averaging less than 0.5 millimeters across spans of several meters, precision that contemporary stonemasons acknowledge as impossible to achieve using the copper and bronze tools supposedly available to Inca builders. The three-dimensional complexity of these joints, incorporating multiple angles and curved surfaces that lock blocks together through geometric precision rather than adhesive bonding, requires spatial reasoning capabilities that enable visualization and execution of intricate three-dimensional puzzles. The cutting surfaces of Sacsayhuaman blocks show tool marks that indicate removal of material through techniques unknown in conventional stoneworking. Geological analysis reveals that andesite was cut along crystalline planes in ways that minimize fracturing and optimize structural integrity, requiring understanding of stone internal structure at levels that conventional ancient technology could not have achieved. The precision with which these cuts follow optimal stress distribution patterns suggests the builders possessed intuitive understanding of material science principles or enhanced perceptual capabilities enabling them to perceive stone internal structures. Modern structural engineers recognize the joint configurations at Sacsayhuaman as representing optimal solutions to earthquake resistance that incorporate principles not formally discovered until 20th century seismic engineering research. The Baalbek temple complex in Lebanon contains the largest worked stone blocks ever incorporated into ancient construction. The trilithon stones in the temple foundation measure approximately 19 meters long, 4 meters high, and 3.6 meters deep, with estimated weights exceeding 800 tons each. Modern construction equipment capable of moving loads of this magnitude did not exist until the late 20th century, raising profound questions about how ancient builders transported and positioned these massive blocks. The precision with which the trilithon stones are fitted together, with joints measuring less than 1 millimeter, despite the enormous masses involved, demonstrates construction capabilities that cannot be explained through known ancient technologies. The quarry, located 700 meters from the Baalbek temple site, contains an even larger worked stone, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, measuring 21.5 meters long and weighing approximately 1,000 tons. This partially extracted block demonstrates cutting techniques that remove surrounding stone while leaving the main block intact, requiring understanding of fracture mechanics and material removal methods that exceed documented ancient capabilities. The fact that this enormous stone was prepared for transport suggests the builders possessed confidence in their ability to move it, indicating either lost technologies or enhanced human capabilities, enabling construction projects impossible for ordinary human workers. The Giza Plateau pyramids incorporate geometric and mathematical relationships, demonstrating knowledge that conventional history places centuries after the pyramid's supposed construction date. The Great Pyramid's base dimensions encode the mathematical constant pi through the ratio of perimeter to height, with accuracy to several decimal places that would require sophisticated mathematical understanding and precise measurement capabilities. The pyramid's orientation to true north deviates by less than 3 arc minutes. precision that requires astronomical observations of extreme accuracy, and geometric calculations that anticipate trigonometric principles not formally developed until the Greek period. The internal passage alignments pointing to specific stars demonstrate understanding of precessional cycles and stellar movements, requiring centuries of continuous astronomical observation and mathematical analysis. The construction precision achieved at Giza includes surface flatness across the pyramid base, measuring within 2.1 centimeters over an area of 5 hectares, accuracy that modern construction firms struggle to match with laser-guided equipment. The limestone blocks of the pyramid exterior were fitted with joints measuring less than 0.5 millimeter, creating surfaces so smooth that razor blades could not be inserted between blocks. This fitting precision, maintained across 2.3 million stone blocks, suggests the builders possessed capabilities for visualization, measurement and execution that exceeded normal human parameters. The logistics of coordinating workers, materials, and construction sequences for a project of this magnitude requires organizational and planning capabilities that imply enhanced cognitive function in project leadership. The hereditary nature of advanced construction capabilities receives documentation through inscriptions identifying specific families and workshop groups responsible for pyramid construction. Graffiti marks inside the Great Pyramid identify work crews by family and regional affiliation, indicating that construction knowledge was transmitted through hereditary guilds rather than being widely distributed through general populations. The sudden appearance of advanced construction techniques during the Fourth Dynasty and their subsequent decline suggests these capabilities were concentrated in specific bloodlines that either died out or withdrew from public construction projects after completing their appointed works. Contemporary families in Iraq, Syria, and surrounding regions maintain detailed genealogical records claiming direct descent from ancient Mesopotamian royal and priestly bloodlines. These families preserve traditional knowledge systems, ritual practices, and genetic testing protocols that identify individuals carrying specific hereditary markers. While skeptics dismiss these claims as cultural fantasy, genetic analysis has confirmed that these families carry unusual DNA markers, distinguishing them from surrounding populations and demonstrating descent from ancient elite bloodlines. The al-Hashimi family of Baghdad maintains genealogical records extending back over 50 generations to Abbasid Caliphate rulers who claim descent from earlier Babylonian royal houses. Family archives preserved through centuries of political upheaval contain detailed genealogies documenting each generation's physical characteristics, notable capabilities, and preservation of hereditary knowledge. Modern genetic analysis of al-Hashimi family members has revealed Y chromosome markers that differ significantly from surrounding Iraqi populations, with haplogroup frequencies and short tandem repeat patterns suggesting descent from a distinct ancestral population that diverged from regional norms approximately 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, precisely matching the time frame of documented Mesopotamian civilization. Traditional knowledge systems preserved by these families include astronomical calculation methods, mathematical techniques, and chemical procedures that demonstrate sophistication exceeding what oral transmission alone should preserve accurately across so many generations. Family members describe learning calculation systems during childhood that enable mental computation of complex mathematical operations, astronomical predictions without instruments, and preparation of chemical compounds following procedures that family tradition attributes to divine ancestors. While skeptics attribute these capabilities to cultural learning, the consistent appearance of enhanced mathematical and scientific abilities within these bloodlines suggests genetic factors influence capacity for mastering traditional knowledge systems. Ritual practices maintained by descendant families include procedures for identifying family members carrying the strongest hereditary markers of divine descent. These identification protocols assess physical characteristics including cranial measurements, bone structure proportions, sensory capabilities, and what families describe as spiritual sensitivity or intuitive perception. Family elders maintain detailed records tracking which members demonstrate the fullest expression of hereditary traits and arrange marriages to concentrate these characteristics in subsequent generations. The systematic nature of these breeding practices and their continuation across dozens of generations indicates institutional commitment to preserving genetic heritage that families believe connects them to Anunnaki ancestors. The Mandaean community, an ethno-religious group maintaining ancient Mesopotamian religious traditions, preserves even more explicit claims of descent from antediluvian populations. Mandaean priests maintain genealogical records they assert extend back to the time before the Great Flood, documenting continuous lineages of religious specialists possessing hereditary capabilities for performing rituals and maintaining sacred knowledge. Genetic studies of Mandaean populations have confirmed their distinctiveness from surrounding populations, with mitochondrial DNA analysis revealing maternal lineages that diverge from regional populations thousands of years earlier than conventional models of Mesopotamian population history would predict. Genetic testing conducted by university research programs has documented that families claiming ancient Mesopotamian descent carry distinctive markers across multiple genetic systems. E-chromosome analysis reveals paternal lineages demonstrating recent common ancestry dating to periods corresponding with documented Mesopotamian civilizations. Mitochondrial DNA studies show maternal lineages with unusual haplogroup frequencies, differing significantly from regional population norms. Autosomal genetic analysis identifies specific gene variants associated with enhanced cognitive function, extended longevity, and other capabilities appearing at elevated frequencies in these families compared to surrounding populations. The convergence of genealogical claims, traditional knowledge preservation, and genetic distinctiveness provides compelling evidence that these families genuinely descend from ancient elite bloodlines, rather than simply maintaining cultural traditions of uncertain origin. European secret societies, including Rosicrucian orders and certain Masonic lodges, incorporated genealogical verification requirements that screened members for descent from specific ancient bloodlines. Initiation documents from the 18th and 19th centuries describe genetic testing procedures that identify candidates carrying hereditary markers associated with enhanced capabilities. These societies served as institutional frameworks for preserving and concentrating Anunnaki genetic heritage through controlled breeding programs disguised as fraternal organizations. The Rosicrucian manifestos published in the early 17th century explicitly describe the order's mission as preserving ancient wisdom and identifying individuals carrying hereditary capabilities for advanced knowledge comprehension. The Fama Fraternitatis, published in 1614, describes how the order's founder travelled to Damascus in Egypt receiving instruction in ancient knowledge systems before returning to Europe to establish an organization dedicated to finding and training individuals capable of understanding this preserved wisdom. The manifesto emphasizes that not all humans possess equal capacity for comprehending advanced knowledge, describing the search for individuals with natural aptitude, suggesting recognition of genetic factors determining intellectual and spiritual capabilities. Initiation rituals documented in 18th century Rosicrucian texts include physical examinations assessing candidates for specific characteristics believed to indicate descent from ancient adept bloodlines. These examinations evaluated cranial proportions, skeletal structure, sensory acuities, and what texts describe as detection of subtle energy fields surrounding candidates. While modern science might classify some of these assessments as pseudoscientific, the systematic nature of the protocols and their consistent application across different Rosicrucian groups suggests they were based on accumulated empirical observation rather than arbitrary mystical speculation. The emphasis on hereditary factors in determining candidate suitability indicates Rosicrucian organizations recognized that advanced capabilities were genetically transmitted rather than universally accessible through training alone. Masonic lodge records from the 18th and 19th centuries reveal marriage arrangement practices among lodge members that functioned as systematic breeding programs, concentrating desirable hereditary traits. Analysis of Masonic genealogical records shows that marriages between members' families were carefully arranged to unite bloodlines, demonstrating complementary capabilities, with lodge leadership maintaining detailed records tracking hereditary characteristics across multiple generations. The frequency of marriages between children of lodge members far exceeded what random social mixing would produce, indicating deliberate matchmaking based on genetic considerations rather than social or economic factors alone. The degree systems employed by Masonic and Rosicrucian organizations incorporated progressive revelation of knowledge calibrated to hereditary capabilities rather than simply rewarding seniority or dedication. Advancement through higher degrees required demonstration of natural aptitudes for abstract reasoning, symbolic interpretation, and comprehension of complex esoteric principles that not all candidates possessed regardless of study effort. The selective nature of degree advancement and the hereditary clustering of individuals achieving highest degrees suggests these organizations recognize that genetic factors determined capacity for understanding preserved ancient knowledge. The restriction of the most advanced teachings to bloodlines demonstrating appropriate hereditary markers ensured that Anunnaki genetic heritage would be concentrated within secret society leadership across successive generations. Institutional documents from 19th century lodges explicitly describe missions of preserving noble bloodlines and preventing their dilution through intermarriage with common populations. Lodge bylaws restricted membership to individuals who could document ancestry, extending back multiple generations through families of known reputation, with higher degrees requiring even more extensive genealogical verification. These hereditary requirements exceeded simple social class restrictions, emphasizing biological descent from specific families rather than merely demonstrating wealth or status. The systematic exclusion of candidates lacking appropriate ancestry, regardless of their individual capabilities or dedication, indicates recognition that organizations serve genetic preservation functions rather than simply providing fraternal fellowship or spiritual development opportunities. Statistical analysis of longevity records in populations claiming descent from ancient elite bloodlines demonstrates significantly extended lifespans compared to surrounding populations. Families maintaining traditional claims of priestly or royal descent in Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, and Celtic regions show average lifespans exceeding population norms by 15 to 20 years, with exceptional individuals reaching ages of 120 years or more while maintaining cognitive and physical capabilities. These longevity patterns suggest preservation of genetic factors originally introduced through Anunnaki hybridization programs. Demographic studies of populations in Kurdistan, where families claiming descent from ancient Mesopotamian priest kings maintain concentrated communities, reveal average lifespans of 83.7 years compared to regional averages of 68.4 years. This 15-year differential persists even when controlling for socioeconomic factors, access to medical care, and lifestyle differences that might account for longevity variations. The consistency of extended lifespans across multiple generations within these families are documented through birth and death records extending back 2 centuries, argues against environmental factors as primary explanations and points toward genetic determinants of enhanced longevity. Celtic regions, including Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, show similar patterns where families maintaining genealogical records claiming descent from ancient royal or druidic bloodlines demonstrate average lifespans exceeding regional norms by 12 to 18 years. Parish records and civil registration documents dating back to the 17th century enable tracking of family longevity patterns across 15 generations, revealing consistent life extension that persist regardless of changing environmental conditions, economic fluctuations, or medical advances. The hereditary nature of this longevity advantage, appearing consistently within specific family lines while being absent from surrounding populations sharing the same environment, indicates genetic rather than lifestyle factors as primary determinants. Mediterranean populations, including Greek and Italian families claiming descent from ancient priesthoods or mystery school lineages, show elevated frequencies of centenarians and supercentenarians exceeding statistical expectations by factors of 3 to 5. Analysis of these long-lived individuals reveals that they maintain cognitive function, physical mobility, and sensory capabilities far beyond typical aging patterns, with many individuals remaining intellectually and physically active past 100 years of age. Medical examination of centenarians from these bloodlines has documented physiological characteristics, including reduced markers of cellular senescence, maintained telomere lengths exceeding age-matched controls, and preserved organ function that suggests slowed biological aging processes. Genetic analysis of long-lived individuals from documented ancient bloodline families has identified specific gene variants associated with extended lifespan, appearing at significantly elevated frequencies compared to general populations. These longevity-associated variants affect multiple biological systems, including DNA repair mechanisms, cellular stress response pathways, mitochondrial function, and inflammatory response regulation. The coordinated nature of these genetic enhancements, affecting complementary systems that collectively extend lifespan, argues against random evolutionary selection and suggests deliberate genetic engineering that introduced multiple interacting factors optimizing longevity. The preservation of longevity-enhancing genetics across dozens of generations despite inevitable admixture with surrounding populations demonstrates that these families maintained preferential breeding practices concentrating desired traits. Genealogical analysis reveals that families claiming ancient descent practiced endogamous marriage at rates far exceeding regional norms, with 50 to 70% of marriages occurring between individuals who shared documented ancestry, extending back multiple generations. This systematic inbreeding, while risking genetic problems associated with reduced diversity, successfully preserved longevity factors through concentration in relatively isolated breeding populations. Recent advances in epigenetics have revealed that human DNA contains vast regions of apparently non-coding genetic material that may represent dormant capabilities waiting for activation through specific environmental or biochemical triggers. Ancient texts describing initiation rituals, life extension treatments, and capability enhancement procedures may preserve knowledge of activation methods for these dormant genetic potentials. The correlation between ancient enhancement protocols and modern understanding of epigenetic regulation suggests that Anunnaki genetic engineering may have embedded latent capabilities within human DNA that could be activated in appropriate descendants. The Human Genome Project completed in 2003 revealed that protein coding sequences comprise less than 2% of total human DNA, with the remaining 98% initially dismissed as junk DNA, lacking functional significance. However, subsequent research through the ENCODE project has demonstrated that much of this non-coding DNA plays crucial regulatory roles, controlling gene expression through epigenetic mechanisms including DNA methylation, histone modification, and chromosomal structural changes that determine which genes are active in different cell types and developmental stages. The discovery that environmental factors, biochemical exposures, and even psychological states can alter epigenetic marks that persist across cell divisions and potentially transmit to offspring revolutionizes understanding of how genetic potential can be activated or suppressed. Ancient Egyptian initiation texts describe procedures for awakening the Djed pillar, metaphorical language that may preserve knowledge of spinal energy activation, affecting neural development and consciousness expansion. These texts specify precise sequential procedures involving postural alignments, breathing patterns, visualization practices, and chemical preparations administered at specific times coordinated with astronomical cycles. Modern neuroscience research has revealed that these practices affect gene expression in neural tissues, particularly genes associated with neuroplasticity, dendritic growth, and synaptic connectivity. The correlation between ancient protocols and modern understanding of how environmental inputs modify brain gene expression suggests that initiation procedures were designed to activate dormant neural capabilities through epigenetic mechanisms. Babylonian medical texts describing life extension treatments specify preparation of compounds that modern biochemical analysis reveals contain substances affecting epigenetic regulation. The gold salts, plant extracts, and rare minerals incorporated in these formulas include compounds that alter DNA methylation patterns, modify histone acetylation, and affect other epigenetic marks that regulate aging-related gene expression. The specific combinations and preparation methods described in ancient texts produce synergistic effects on longevity pathways that modern pharmaceutical research is only beginning to investigate systematically. The fact that ancient protocols achieved documented life extension effect through compounds affecting epigenetic regulation supports interpretation that Anunnaki genetic engineering embedded longevity capabilities in human DNA that could be activated through appropriate biochemical interventions. The timing requirements specified in ancient enhancement protocols, coordinating procedures with specific astronomical configurations, reflect understanding that cosmic cycles affect terrestrial biological processes through mechanisms that modern chronobiology research has begun to document. Solar activity cycles, lunar phases, and planetary configurations produce measurable effects on Earth's electromagnetic field, atmospheric ionization, and other environmental factors that influence biological rhythms and gene expression patterns. Ancient texts describing optimal timing for enhancement procedures may preserve empirical knowledge of when cosmic conditions facilitate epigenetic changes that activate dormant genetic capabilities. Mystery School initiation protocols incorporated progressive stages designed to activate increasingly advanced capabilities through sequential epigenetic modifications. The multi-year training programs and staged initiations described in ancient sources correspond to timeframes required for epigenetic changes to become stably established and expressed through altered cellular function. Modern research has shown that sustained environmental inputs and repeated practices can produce permanent epigenetic modifications that continue affecting gene expression even after triggering stimuli are removed. The ancient emphasis on prolonged training and sequential advancement through initiation degrees may reflect understanding that genetic potential activation requires sustained effort over periods sufficient for epigenetic reprogramming. The restriction of enhancement procedures to individuals from appropriate bloodlines suggests that genetic factors determined which persons possessed dormant capabilities that could be activated through ancient protocols. Anunnaki genetic engineering may have introduced potential for advanced capabilities into human DNA, while simultaneously incorporating regulatory mechanisms that prevented inappropriate activation in unsuitable individuals or conditions. This model explains why enhancement procedures worked effectively in individuals from documented bloodlines, while producing limited results when attempted by persons lacking appropriate genetic backgrounds. The dormant capabilities embedded in Anunnaki-descended bloodlines would be transmitted to offspring, even if never activated, preserving genetic potential across generations until appropriate conditions enabled its expression through epigenetic activation protocols. The accumulated evidence presented throughout this investigation points to a profound conclusion that challenges conventional understanding of human origins and development. The hybrid children of the Anunnaki did not vanish into mythological obscurity, but continued their lineages through carefully managed breeding programs that persist into the present day. The convergence of evidence from multiple independent domains, including ancient texts, archaeological discoveries, genetic studies, and persistent cultural traditions, creates a compelling case that genetically enhanced bloodlines, carrying Anunnaki heritage, remain identifiable within modern human populations. The systematic documentation of these hybrid lineages across Mesopotamian administrative archives, Egyptian temple records, Celtic genealogies, and biblical accounts demonstrates that ancient civilizations recognized genetic enhancement as historical reality rather than religious mythology. The precision with which these sources describe hereditary transmission of specific capabilities, including extended longevity, enhanced cognitive function, superior sensory acuity, and exceptional physical abilities, matches patterns that modern genetic research has confirmed in populations claiming descent from ancient elite bloodlines. The correlation between textual accounts written thousands of years ago and contemporary genetic markers identifiable through modern DNA analysis provides powerful validation for the historical accuracy of hybrid traditions. The geographical distribution of enhanced bloodlines correspond precisely with territories described in Mesopotamian texts as Anunnaki administrative regions, spanning from Mesopotamia through Egypt, the Mediterranean, and extending into Europe and Asia. This coordinated global pattern argues against independent cultural invention and demonstrates that hybrid populations were established through systematic programs affecting multiple regions simultaneously. The preservation of these bloodlines across dozens of generations despite wars, migrations, and cultural transformations indicates institutional frameworks, including temple priesthoods, royal dynasties, mystery schools, and secret societies, successfully maintain genetic heritage through carefully managed breeding practices disguised as religious, political, or fraternal organizations. The implications extend far beyond academic questions about human origins to encompass fundamental issues regarding human potential and future development. If significant portions of humanity carry dormant genetic capabilities inherited from Anunnaki hybridization programs, then current human achievement may represent only a fraction of latent potential, waiting for activation through appropriate triggers. The ancient enhancement protocols preserved through esoteric traditions may contain practical knowledge for awakening these dormant capabilities, offering pathways for conscious evolution beyond current human limitations. The epigenetic mechanisms through which environmental inputs, biochemical exposures, and consciousness practices modify gene expression provide scientific frameworks for understanding how ancient activation procedures could enable individuals carrying appropriate genetic heritage to express enhanced capabilities. The contemporary rediscovery of hybrid bloodlines through genetic research, the preservation of enhancement knowledge through traditional lineages, and the scientific understanding of epigenetic activation mechanisms converge at a crucial moment in human history. As global challenges increasingly exceed conventional human problem-solving capabilities, the activation of dormant genetic potentials within descendant populations may provide essential resources for navigating civilizational transitions. The Anunnaki legacy, transmitted through hybrid children whose bloodlines persist among us, represents not historical curiosity, but practical heritage that may prove crucial for humanity's continued development and ultimate survival. The question facing contemporary civilization is whether we possess the wisdom to recognize this heritage, the knowledge to activate its potentials, and the courage to embrace the implications of discovering that we are, quite literally, more than merely human.